Welcome to the Homeschool for the Win podcast, the podcast for homeschool families looking for real conversations, practical insights, and a fresh perspective on homeschooling. Hosted by homeschool consultant and homeschool mom Jeanette McBee and Jose Lopez, a college and career readiness coach who works exclusively with homeschool families. In this podcast, we dive into the latest homeschooling trends, educational choices, and ways to help students discover their passions and future paths, all while building a supportive homeschool community. Whether you're just getting started or been homeschooling for years, join us on Homeschool for the Win and be a part of the conversation that informs, encourages, and inspires your homeschool adventure.
Well, hello everyone. Welcome to Homeschool for the Win. I am super excited to be here today. My name is Jose Lopez.
And I'm Jeanette McBee with Homeschool Help with Jeanette.
And we are here to talk about one of our favorite and fun topics on extracurricular activities. Not just about what are extracurricular activities, what are people doing, but more so of how do you select an extracurricular activity? There's so many options out there, and so what is the best one for you, the parents, and for your student? And so I'm excited to talk about that, but before we do that, Jeanette, you know what time it is?
Yes, it's time for check-in. Sorry, I was excited.
It's time for our Homeschool for the Win check-in. This is the part, this segment we want our audience to know, or just know a little bit more about us and what our experiences are. And we invite you all, if you haven't joined us on our Facebook page, to look out for us, Homeschool for the Win. And if you want us to answer any of your check-in questions, feel free to share that with us. We'd love to answer any questions out there. But for today, our question that I'm going to ask you, Jeanette, is what was your favorite extracurricular activity when you were in school?
So when I was in high school, I was part of a speech club from, I think it was either my sophomore or junior year all the way through. And I had so much fun and got to know the kids and the teacher that led it so well and really got me out of my comfort zone a lot. How about you? What was your favorite?
So I was a band kid. When I was in high school, I played trumpet. I started off with playing trumpet from middle school to my freshman year, and then one day one of our band directors asked and said, "We need tuba players. Is there anyone out there willing to trade their instrument for a tuba?" And I said, "Sure, I'll give it a try." My thought process was, if I play the tuba and it needs so much air to play the tuba that it might make me a better trumpet player. That was my mindset, but then I ended up loving tuba, and it was funny because I rode the bus to school, and so I remember having to take a humongous instrument onto the bus. It was nice though because I got to sit by myself.
Oh.
No one sat by me because that was pretty much like three people sitting in
right
of those bus stalls. So, but I loved it. It was awesome. I will say, if I could go back in time though, and pick an extracurricular activity that I didn't participate in, but I wish I would have, was drama. I think it would have been fun to do some acting, do some stage work, maybe some singing. And so I wish I could go back. I think it was one of those opportunities where I saw my older brother who played saxophone, and I was like, oh, I like that. That's cool. I want to play an instrument as well. Let me do band. But if I could go back and talk to my middle school self and say, maybe you should try out drama, I think that would have been cool to do as well.
Yeah. That's really neat.
Was there any extracurricular activity that you wish you would have done when you were in high school?
That I wish I would have done? I wish I would have stuck with track, probably.
Yeah.
But honestly, I didn't have time. Between speech and being part of musicals and stuff like that, there's just no time. I was already at the school from 6:30 to 10 at night.
Do you notice how I never said anything about sports?
Yeah.
So, but that's the fun part, is that we get to live, we get to see sometimes our kids doing things, extracurricular activities that we wish we could have done in the past too. So I was not a sports kid. My wife, humongous sports person, and
Really?
so has encouraged our kids to do sports. And so I didn't really play sports when I was in high school or as a kid, really. But now I get to see like how exciting it is for parents to watch it, and how stressful it is sometimes because I'm like, I don't know what they're doing. Is that right? Is that good? How do I train them
That is
and
so
playing
true.
sports? So, but it is fun to see them. But today, I think that's where we get to go on this conversation on talking about extracurricular activities, and just what it looks like for choosing extracurricular activities for our kids. I think that it's sometimes fun to think of great ideas for our kids to do and even to teach them and show them extracurricular activities that maybe you didn't have an opportunity to do while you're in school. But then realization comes into play where you start to notice, ooh, choosing extracurricular activities, that's going to either cost us money, it's going to cost us time. Like, how do we move our schedule around to do these activities? How can we? And so many questions just keep coming up where it's like, well, how do we decide which is the best um, activity for our students? And so that's what
Hmm.
we really want to focus on today. And so we have four things that we want to talk about, or just give you some guidance or some just recommendations from what we've seen or what we've experienced on choosing extracurricular activities. And so the first one that we would recommend when choosing an activity is really to go back to why you homeschool, that theme, that question. I know some podcasts before we've had this conversation on why do you homeschool, and so when it comes to extracurricular activities, we want to make sure that those questions are aligning with the activities that our students are doing and making sure that are they, in my words, checking the boxes. So during that podcast, we had many reasons of why we were homeschooling, and so I'm just going to touch on three. So we homeschool because we want to get closer to God. We want our students to get closer to God. We want them to build character, and we want them to be family oriented as well.
Hmm.
And so that's where we look at just really activities that are, and that's kind of a family discussion to have, like, are these activities checking one of these boxes? Are they checking two of these boxes? Do they need to check all three before an activity is chosen? And so, Jeanette, do you have like an example of like kind of reviewing like why do we homeschool and just making sure, oh, this checks this box, or it doesn't check any box?
Yeah, I think one of the memories I have is when Ian was in sixth grade, and he was interested in cross country. And we lived in a very small town in Colorado at that point, and one of his very best friends was also going to be a part of the cross country team. And so I decided that, oh, sorry, that cross country team was part of the public school. So it was going to be a big jump socially. So one of the things we had to talk about when you're talking about building character, because we had already looked at the calendar and kind of all the logistics and things, and could we swing it? So building character, was our son maturity wise ready for something like that? Socially, would he be able to get out of his comfort zone and make some friends, or just feel comfortable in that space after getting over the hump of meeting everybody for the first time? And he did. We went ahead and put him in. He does recall it now as an 18-year-old man. He thinks back to that because there was some, colorful language that was used by the other students, and the coaches didn't say anything, and that he was just totally taken aback by that. But at the other point was that so he could recognize that that was not okay, but also not judge people. And he did become friends with some other guys in the class, and he understood how things would go socially. And it was actually a really great experience for him, to kind of broaden his horizon to being friendly to other people. And it was really, like I said, it's a small town, so it was really a great experience. And we moved after that, so we did never have to come back and revisit it. But I mean, that's just God's timing and all of that. So yeah, that was definitely really important. Actually, it was more important in his life than I thought it would be, which is so many homeschool decisions are like that.
Yeah, and
So
I
how
mean
about you?
yeah, and I would say that for us, when we look at why we homeschool and when we're choosing activities, there are times when it checks all the boxes. And so for us, I have a 8-year-old and an 11-year-old who they are doing a program called Trail Life. And it is a great program where not only do we get the skills on being in the outdoors, camping, but it also is a Christ-centered program where it teaches our children about different characteristics. It teaches about Jesus, and it teaches us how, it teaches about camping skills. And so for us, it checks all those boxes. Where number one is it getting us closer to God? Check.
Right.
Yes. There are awards out there that we can receive by learning Bible verses, by memorizing. There's different lessons that we learn on a weekly basis. Number two is it building character. Yeah, there's a lot of little 8-year-olds that are running around, and we're talking about character, what it means to be wise, and what it means to be strong, and what it means to be a man. And so it's just an awesome program to be in. And then finally, is it family oriented? Well, yes, it is, because I feel like I have to learn what it means to go camping. I'm not a camper.
Oh,
So
okay.
it means that, well, they're learning about skills, how to build a tent or build a fire. I'm learning as well. And so we've already talked about going out camping as a family. And so those things just make sense, that it's like, okay, does this make sense for us as a family to participate in? And the answer is yes. And so when those opportunities come in, I think it's great. But that kind of leads us to, the first thing is, why do we homeschool? Does it make sense to do that? But then it leads into the individual student. Does it make sense based on their personality and maturity? And Jeanette, you talked about this as well, like where Ian, when he's out there just deciding on doing cross country, like you have to think, okay, there may be a opportunity where there might be some language out there where is my kiddo ready for that? And so I think that's a fair point when looking at maturity and looking at, like, are they ready to have those conversations, or to see what sometimes the world will look at and just and participate in. For me and my kiddos, it's really funny because we're starting to experience that when we participate in sports like soccer, and my youngest does karate. And one of the biggest takeaways that they've received already is, why don't they focus on why we're here? So why are they focused on soccer or karate? Like, they lack focus. And I'm like, yeah, I don't know what to tell you. Like, and so I think that they, as homeschoolers, they know that they're signing up for something. It is a huge commitment for them to sign up for soccer and karate, that they're there to focus on those things, where I would assume that other kids are with their friends all day long, that doing another activity is just like being with their friends. And so, but yeah, what are your thoughts on, any additional thoughts on maturity wise and just the personality of your kiddo?
Yeah, I think also, so I have a very outgoing kid, and then I have a very not outgoing kid, and I've had to recognize that not outgoing kid still will thrive and do very well in their own way, in her own way. So she went to driver's ed, and I found out that she made one friend, and that was her driving partner, over 8 weeks. And that's funny to me, just because I'm not built that way. But I would ask her, like, are you doing okay? Is this good? She's like, I'm fine. Things are going great. And I was like, wonderful. So again, maturity, personality, And for the parent to understand that it's not always going to look the way that we would do it, but that doesn't mean that it's not going well. So when they do these extracurriculars, they are more independent. They are doing so many new activities, especially if they're younger. They're doing new activities on their own for the first time, and there's always a learning curve. I think that when you talk about maturity and personality, just having conversations beforehand about what things will look like, life isn't always like that. Things can just kind of come at us when we're not ready. But, just kind of letting them know this is what this is going to be like really helps set them up, I think, for success. So they're not so surprised. And that's just what's worked in our family. So yeah, I think that there's a range of doing things, all of them working well together.
And I think that when it comes to personality too and maturity wise too, there is some things that just make sense for students as well. So when my kiddo was really young, he dealt a lot with anger issues and tantrums. And
Mm-hmm.
so my recommendation to my wife was maybe we should put him in karate.
Mm-hmm.
And so that way he can let out some aggression. And it was really, really beneficial where he did it and he just started changing, like where there was a lot of character building in that as well, where they had to recite a karate creed, and it was fun to say, like, when he would get angry, it'd be like, okay, what does the creed say about respecting others? And he's like, yes,
Mm-hmm.
I know. And so it's kind of cool to see that, right? Like
Yeah.
how like there are some programs out there that like for my kiddo who had that anger issue, that made
Mm-hmm.
sense, where there were some others kind of stretching things that we had for like my oldest, who um, is kind of similar to where he's a little shy and timid, where it's like, well, we're gonna put you in some situations where you can just kind of have friends, and that's where sports really has helped out.
Yeah.
And so yeah, I think that that's something that when choosing an extracurricular activity, is it fitting what you're trying to build with a homeschool, and is it really fitting your kid and their personality and their maturity,
Mm-hmm.
especially, and I love with the adaptability with homeschool families, where if you feel like your kiddo's more mature and maybe able to have higher levels of conversation, then maybe you can start putting them with older students to have those to fill like those activities where they can start talking more and more in depth about conversations that's
Mm-hmm.
at their level. So
Yeah, absolutely. I was also going to add that we wanted our kids to be in a team environment. You kind of mentioned that before. That's what got my brain going on it. Um, being able to be a part of a team of people that they've never met before, but it has some structure. That's really really good for them, and socially they can kind of see, okay, what's appropriate and what isn't, and they can learn how to self-regulate a little bit more. Another thing I would mention, I think we wanted to talk a little bit about, if I could abruptly switch into what's your lifestyle, what's your family schedule like, right? That was another point that we wanted to make. um when oh, to put this kind of silly, so my son is a very um tall, lanky man, and my husband is, I don't know how to put this, but stout and a little short. And my husband was a wrestler. He was a very good wrestler. My son is more of a runner, right? And so when we were looking at sports, especially when they were younger, like middle school, even though my husband may have wanted my son to do something a little more like super physical, that's not how he was wired. And that's not what was going to work for him. So we had to change our expectations and think about what would work for our family.
hmm I completely agree. I'm not a sports kid, and so but my sons love doing sports, and I blame that on my wife because she was someone who was in sports. But like it is hard to watch them do something that I wasn't prepared to show them. So I enjoy running, and so I remember I got an advice from someone who was like, when I Xavier, my oldest, was just born. They were like, okay, and I was like, I have a son. And I'm super nervous, and they're like, "Why?" And I was like, "I don't know how to throw a football. I don't know how to throw a baseball." And I remember he looked at me like confused, and he was like, "Don't you run?" And I was like, "Yeah, but that's different." He's like, "Just teach him how to run." I
Right?
was like, "That's it," and it's like, "Yeah," and so like I can teach them that, but then there's other things that they're learning on top of those skills, and so, but they enjoy that, and I want them to enjoy that. I want to learn how to do that. I want to encourage them. I want to learn about the different techniques, and
Mm,
watching a YouTube videos on different techniques on how to play soccer, or even though I don't know the rules, so being like part of that process has been fun as well. And when we talk about lifestyles too, I don't know if you're like my family, but my family, we have non-negotiable activities where
mm-hmm,
my wife is like, no matter what, my sons will do this activity. This
mm-hmm.
activity turned out to be piano. I didn't, I never, I didn't I didn't say that we shouldn't do it. I just was like,
Sure.
if that's what you is a non-negotiable, like regardless of how much they are kicking and screaming that they don't want to play piano, they still have to play it, which they weren't. They love playing piano,
Yeah.
but uh, but that's something that they're like, I want to do that. That's a lifestyle thing that I would say that if there's a non-negotiable activity that your family is doing, then that's something that you kind of have to carve into what your lifestyle is looking like at the time.
Right.
Is there any non-negotiables that you have?
I think our non-negotiables were had more to do with how they were wired. That was really it. I don't know that there were any activities that they were like we had to do. I think it was more of we wanted them to try many things and see what would click. Part of that was our family is small, and so we're able to do that. I was joking with you earlier. I think Ian played every sport between the ages of 5 and 8,
Hmm.
and I didn't do that on purpose. I just want to see if he liked any of them enough to continue, and lo and behold, nope. But he had a great time. He had a lot of fun. We had a lot of fun as a family. I mean, Brad and I met a lot of parents in the community. We were going through rec leagues. Again, it was a small town. And my daughter was meeting, all the little siblings and running around with them. And it was really a neat season of life. So I also really agree with it being family oriented, making sure that there's some level of everybody getting something out of it. That makes the next thing we'll talk about, the cost and commitment. It makes it worth it.
Yeah, and I think we also, before we get to the cost and commitment, we also have to talk
Mhm.
about schedule. We have to
Oh,
talk about the time.
absolutely.
Like that's the number one thing that is difficult because I love what you said that I could put my son in all of the activities, but that means that all of our time is gone. Not necessarily for the kid. I mean, yes, for our kid because we'll be taking them to different areas, but
Right.
also for parents,
Mm-hmm.
where there is times where how do you decide one activity or of another, like if that activity is going to if you join a sports league that has games on Sunday, is Sunday your sacred time where is that really
Right.
what you want to do, and or are you doing way too many activities where you don't have enough time to have a family dinner at
Mm.
your table? Is that activity worth your time? And so for me and my family, I feel like we're at a busy time right now where we're doing activities. We try to keep one day sacred, where which is our Friday, but we
Mm-hmm.
get nervous when we decide to do a sports activity that says practices may be on Friday, and we're like, oh, that's our sacred day. Like we don't want to do anything that day, and so how do you decide from that? And so,
Yeah.
and then I think we were talking about this too about like, does it get easier with time. A couple of things. Does it get easier with time? And the amount of kids that you have, does the scheduling also become difficult as well? And so what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think it has everything to do with um, your calendar and being able to look at it ahead of time and really picture what this activity looks like when you're in the season of that sport. Looking 2 months ahead and really being able to envision how this looks as a family. For our family, we always had the kids just in one thing per season. And that was the parameters that we put on it. So when they were, I would say ours is a little different because our son and daughter are not interested in playing sports, which isn't necessarily what we thought would happen. It's just the way it is. So from elementary to middle school, for us was really busy. We were driving them everywhere, and even to different towns once in a while. Once they got into high school and Ian was driving, then I suddenly didn't have as much to do or go. And it was really important for Brad and I that they have jobs. Now, this is another thing that parents have to consider, especially when you're looking at high school, is yes, there's extracurricular activities. How does that weigh in with learning how to be in the workforce? When I was growing up, personally, going in the public school system, like I said, I was at school for a very long period of time, and I didn't have time for a job. My parents, knowing that I was going to go into music and I'm doing all the things that would lead me to have a lot of experience, they thought that me having a job would not be in my best interest. And so we worked out a plan for all of that, and it worked out great. It's not like I never had a job. I worked during college. So for Ian, he didn't have a bunch of extracurriculars, and so he needed to get a job. And that worked out really great for him. He got some awesome experience. So that's something that families have to decide. Where does job line up with this? What would benefit my child in the long run? How about you? What in the season you're in right now?
Well, I think that just hearing off of your experience, because I'm in the middle school, like elementary
Right.
school years, but I think you're right where right now in the season that we have, it's really try everything and see what you really like and what makes sense.
Hmm.
And so we're in this exploratory
Exploratory?
season. Yeah, we're in this exploratory season where we are trying to just try everything as that fits into our schedule to see if it really works with our kids, if they like it, if this is something they want to continue to pursue. Um,
Yes.
as a um, a coach of helping high school students, what I've seen is as you get older, yes, stick to what you like and what you're doing and what's going to benefit for your goal after high school. But really, you have to make some time when it comes to hopefully getting some internships, job shadows,
Right.
um, part-time employment. Like those opportunities also have to be weaved into there as well, depending on what the goal is that you want to do after high school. So I think that it gets a little from this vantage point of having two younger boys, it gets a little bit crazy because we're trying everything and seeing what works. As they get older, from what I'm hearing in your experience, it might get easier because they can drive. They can go to their part-time job, or they know where they're going, and
Hmm.
like there's a focus on what they're doing that like maybe they can have a little ownership in it as well. And so I think that that's where we have to kind of work on it together. However, I will say, if you're listening, you disagree with us or agree with us,
It's
please let us know
okay.
on Facebook. I really want to know what your opinion is, because we have two kids, right? And so I
Yeah.
don't even know how. I'd love to hear some tips and tricks on balancing a calendar or a schedule when you have multiple kids. So please let us know what your tips and tricks are for the entire group. But yeah, and then that leads us to our last and final point, which is cost and commitment, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, the biggest or one of the factors that we'd have into this is really looking at the cost of these activities, because like I said, we're in this phase where we're trying all different types of activities, but if we're trying all these activities and maybe it costs $10 here, $25 here, but the equipment costs 100, it
Right.
can really add up. And so if we were to plan ahead, like you were saying, 2 months or even 6 months in advance, it may be best to look at your budget and say, how much can we afford to do activities? Are we
Mm-hmm.
doing it per student, per activity? Like, what does that look like? That also helps you to determine, can we do these activities, or can we afford to do it? And so that kind of might take off some activities to say, like, really can't afford this. And so really, is it possible to do it? Or we're going to be traveling a lot if we're doing traveling sports. And so can we afford to travel that much with gas prices, car maintenance, all that kind of stuff? It's good to just kind of step back and say, what is the realistic cost? And if you're
Mm-hmm.
doing that and you're thinking about the cost, it may be beneficial, depending again on maturity and of maturity of your kiddo, to say, okay, just to let you know, we have allotted this amount of money for you to do activities. If we're trying something out for the first time, we're just going to let you know that this is how much it costs, and we really want you to be committed to it. Unless there's in a circumstance where it's a dangerous situation, we need to get you out. That, yeah, we understand that. But however, if there's something where it's like, for instance, my kiddo, one day, he had a karate time where he didn't want to go to a karate practice, and we said, okay, if you're not going, you have to give us $5. And he's like,
Mm-hmm.
okay. He handed us $5. Next time he was like, I don't want to go. We're like, okay, well, give us $5. He's like, okay, I'll go. And so, like, it was good that he recognized that it costs money. So, like, for him, it was more like, I get it. The couch is super comfy, but like, you have to go to karate practice,
That's
right?
right.
And so, like, having those conversations is beneficial,
Mm-hmm.
so that they know that there is a commitment. Because in the future, when they grow up, and for me especially, I would love to have a job where I'm like, I don't want to go in today, and not go in and still get paid. But that's not going to happen. So we have to teach about commitment and the cost of the decisions of not, and not continuing on with a commitment that we said we were going to do. So,
Absolutely. Something that we were talking about was even if the time doesn't look right now, it doesn't mean that you can't do it later. So I think that's also something to consider. What just came to mind was when Alyssa was little, she really wanted horse riding lessons. She got pony fever, and
hmm
she just really wanted to do it. Lo and behold, I had found someone that was a horse trainer and or gave horse riding lessons and at a really great price at a stable that was 10 minutes from our house. And I could not say no to that. That was a yes, not a problem at all. And Ian was off doing something else at that time. And so that worked out cost wise for our family. I mean, everything checked all of the boxes. We moved, and Alyssa wanted to do it again. Now, the price was much higher at a place that was not very close, which does matter to me. And we were at a place financially where we could not do it. And so sometimes that happens. There is a very strong no, and we have to go with that. And that doesn't mean that you failed your child or anything. That I'm having visions of like, oh my gosh, she could have been this great equestrian.
yeah.
And you know what? Maybe that was not in the cards, and this is God showing us right now how. And it's not like he didn't bring other things. She really enjoys spending time drawing, and that's her therapy, and she loves it. And so I feel like God takes care of those things where we feel like, oh, I just, I missed out, or could have been so great. But it really does work out, especially if you have that positive influence in their lives saying, that's okay. Sometimes we're told no, and this is how we handle.
And to kind of jump on that topic as well too, like if cost is a factor when it comes to activity, I love homeschool families, and I've said this forever, that they're very scrappy and come up with great solutions. And
Yes.
so I will say that if it is a no, you can't do it, let's try and figure out a way to do it and see how we can be resourceful, because that's
Mm,
what I really want my kids to understand, is that we're going to try every way that we can and come up with some creative solutions.
yeah.
And so let's walk together with that as well. And so I would say that if cost is a factor in activities, or you can't participate in activities, look for different ways to do free activities that really would benefit. One of the things I've been toying with in my mind is that I've talked about this in a previous podcast, that we have been, my family, we've been trying out frisbee golf. And so I know that I partner with with Thrivent, which is an insurance company that gives you what they call action teams. And action teams give you $250 as seed money to either create activities or create like a educational experience. And so for me, it's like, well, could I go to a frisbee golf store, ask someone, how many students could you take and teach us like a 1 hour frisbee golf lesson for an hour, and then after we all learn how to throw frisbees, can we all as a homeschool community have 10 kids, and we just say, hey, every Wednesday at 1 o'clock, we're all going to play frisbee golf. We all have learned the lesson, like, so we can all become scrappy, come up with ideas on like how to do it. So, for your example of riding with horses, like there may be some place where you can volunteer or you can work at a stable
Yeah.
too, and maybe they could provide so like we have the flexibility to be scrappy, and I think that that's what our kids need to see, is that we're not taking no for an answer, and we're gonna create the experiences as someone hasn't done it, and we're gonna try and do it for, if again cost is a factor, for as low cost as we can,
Hmm.
and so I think that's where we have to kind of think outside the box. So
Yeah.
so so I would say, in conclusion, right? If we were to wrap all this up together, like when it comes to choosing activities, again, there's a ton out there, and I just love all the resources that are out there for homeschool families. There's been so many opportunities for my family to participate in homeschool groups and homeschool activities, and so all those activities come at a price, whether it's time, whether it's money, whether it's family time, like, it all comes at a price. So how do you decide? And so again, we got to lean on what is our family or our homeschool mission. What are we
Hmm.
trying to accomplish? Does it check those check boxes? Is it something that my student or my kiddo would just be interested in, and are they mature enough to participate in that? Is that at our season and our family lifestyle right now, does that activity really fit into that mold, into that process, and does it really align with what our schedule is looking like right now, or are we just filling it in with just activities that just, it's going to blow up ourselves, where we're going to be tired by Sunday after all the activities we've done? And then have we taken into consideration the cost of it as well? And so when you look at all those factors, if you're checking the boxes and if all those conversations that you're having are making sense, that seems like it would be a good activity. But if
Hmm.
you are questioning, like even after all that, you've checked through the boxes and you've even looked at all that information that we talked about, but even if you can't decide, is that still the right activity, the best thing that we say is to lean in prayer and just
Hmm.
ask God, is this really fruitful for my son or my daughter or for our family? And if it is, awesome, open this door. If it's not, help us lead towards whatever it is that's just going to make more sense for our family. And I think with that guidance, it really helps you to decide on what's going to be the best for your kiddos and for your family.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so that's our episode for today, and we're just so excited to talk about extracurricular activities. Again, if you're not following us on our Facebook page, please look out for us. Homeschool for the Win is our page, and please let us know what you're thinking about, like extracurricular activities. If you have questions, reach out to us. We'd love to hear from you all. But yeah, it's a great episode, and we hope you all have a good one and have a great one. Bye.
Bye.